Hey, podcast friends. This is Dr. Steve Hewlett with the podcast Simple Healthy Choices for Weight Loss, where every week we help people who have realized that as their health has been declining over the years, the number of medications they are being prescribed is increasing. We want to help you reverse this health path so you can live the vibrant, pain-free, and hopefully medication-free life you deserve to live. If you'd like even more information on this topic, you can go to Amazon or Audible and pick up my book, Your Plate is Your Fate. And if you think my book helps you on your new health path, please tell your friends and leave a review where you purchased it. Welcome, podcast friends. And I am so excited. This is another interview podcast, and this one is going to be with Casey Ruff. And Casey Ruff has been a certified personal trainer since 2007. He successfully ran a metabolic testing program for a large gym and oversaw 13 programs in the West region. He has multiple certifications as a personal trainer, lifestyle coach, and performance. And so now I just want to kind of basically open this up to Casey. And first, Casey, tell us, what did you do? How did you get into this? And thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. This is going to be great.
Man, thank you guys so much for having me. It was so great to meet you in person at Low Carb Denver and then to see you again at KetoCon. It was such a great time to hang out, and hosted you guys a few weeks ago on the podcast, and just love your energy and love the message that you're putting out there. To see you guys just thriving and kicking ass is such a cool example. You already addressed our all podcast friends, and I consider you guys my podcast friends. So
and you as well.
It's such an honor to be here with you guys. Yeah, so, I would say kind of like a chubby kid kind of growing up, I knew that it wasn't a good thing that my mom had to buy husky clothes. I just didn't know what that meant. But I also love sports. My dad covers sports here in the Salt Lake City area for a local TV station. So I was exposed to hockey and basketball and baseball. So I played lots of different sports growing up. Hockey and eventually cycling were two of my primary sports that I got into. And I went to college studying architecture of all things, which is ironic because I'm a personal trainer, which by the nature of it means I don't even know how to count to 12. So I don't know how I thought I could handle the math of trying to be an architect. But you mentioned 2007. It was the off season of 2006 in the wintertime that I just needed a place to do some training in the off season for my cycling. And a big corporate gym had just opened up here in the Salt Lake Valley. And so it was kind of expensive, but I decided to check it out. And it was there that I started kind of watching the personal trainers. And I noticed that they were helping a lot of their clients by using heart rate monitors. So not only were they giving them programs and showing them different exercises, that all looked really fun and engaging, but also they were, using technology that I'd been using for several years before that and using heart rate monitors. And before I even started working there, I knew way more about the heart rate monitors that they were selling than their most knowledgeable person on the topic. So that kind of gave me a little bit of an advantage. Funny aside, now that I think about it, when I was 18, my parents gave me a TV VCR combo that I could take down to college with me. And they were pretty upset that I returned it to get a polar heart rate monitor at the time.
I don't think I'd be upset about that at all if my son did that.
pretty nerdy. So I had that background, and I went into the personal trainer's manager's office and asked what I needed to do. He told me to get an online certification, which I did. Hit the books pretty hard for a few months to pass my certification, and was hired in March of 2007, and have been very fortunate to have a really great career out of it. We no longer work for the big corporate gym since they put us on unemployment during the pandemic, and kind of the rules of the game for personal training really changed. And so we started our company in 2020 called Boundless Body. It's just my wife and I, and we just train our people and do some nutrition coaching and Pilates and some tissue work. And it's been a great journey.
Man, that's great. Now, did you start your podcast right at that same time, or did you do Boundless Body for a little while before you started your podcast?
Boundless Body was first for sure. So I always knew that podcasting was the way that I learned about this stuff. So, eventually when I got into low carbohydrate nutrition, started learning about that, it was podcasting that really taught me everything I needed to know. And when I decided that I found something that was really working for a lot of people, that was it for me. That was the last day, I listened to music in my car. That was,
right.
The last time I read a fiction book or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
My whole life became obsessed with it. As you guys well know, find this message is hidden in plain sight, and it's so wonderful. And podcasting was a big part of that. And so I always knew that I wanted to kind of give back in that way. I had no idea what it would grow to be in the end. But when we started in October of 2020, It was my wife and I that were, going to do a joint interview where I was going to interview her. She was going to interview me. I had so much resistance to doing that interview that as it came time that we set aside to do it, I kept telling her like, let's do one more practice run. Play with the music one more time. Like, I don't think we've got this nailed. I'm so grateful for her that she was like, no, we're going to do this. We're recording today, dummy. Like, let's get this done. And so for as cringy as that first episode was, I'm glad that we decided to push record. And that was definitely credit to my wife, Bethany, who pushed me to do it, because I did have a lot of resistance. And, I'm sure you experienced this as well. Like, there's so many other great podcasts out there. There's people that have great messages. It's like, what could I possibly say that somebody else isn't saying? But we forget that all of us have a voice and what I would consider a responsibility to share this message. So I'm glad we started the business July 1st of 2020, and the podcast was like October 1st, 2020. So
Yeah.
Man, and that is wonderful. And so you've already, as of the recording of this podcast, you've already done 471 episodes, 3 a week. That's crazy.
I know.
That's insane.
I know.
I can't believe you do that.
I know. Yeah, it is. I will fully acknowledge that. I don't know how it happened in the beginning when I was kind of, doing these interviews. Once, got past the resistance of pushing record, I just found it like really fun and really enjoyable. And I just wanted to talk to anybody. And so our first few episodes were, former NBA basketball players. At one point, I interviewed my grandparents who were in their 80s and 90s. So they're good examples of longevity. And, I interviewed Dr. Bill Schindler was one of our first guests. And I'm so grateful for people like him and Dr. Sean Baker and Dr. Ben Bickman for saying, yes, I will be on your podcast. I'm so grateful that they would take time to come on to a show that at the time we didn't have listeners or an audience or whatever. And I just kind of settled into the cadence of just doing releases Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I have yet to get sick of it. And maybe one day I will, but I think it's really fun. So we're just keep on that cadence.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad you're doing it. And we were the same way you were. I first started looking into all this nutrition and everything when I was asked to do a talk over for the pediatric seminar over at the hospital that I worked at before I retired. And I put together a talk. And then I thought, well, let me go back and see if there's anything new in nutrition in the literature. And it was amazing, all the stuff that's out there. And like you said, it's hidden in plain sight. Anybody could find all this stuff, but nobody's looking because all they hear is what they hear on television commercials and from drug companies and food companies and sugar industries. And they're all telling them, eat horrible things that will kill you without saying those words,
Yeah.
And it's like, I wanted to do everything I could to get the word out, just like you're doing. Is like, that's why I wrote the book. That's why I started the podcast. And that's how we found you. And it's been wonderful ever since then.
It is. It's so wonderful. And it's cool with podcasting that you understand that there's no limitations or rules. Like, do you want to do an 8-hour episode or a 30-minute episode? You guys have done so many different formats. Steve solo, the two of you talking together, which is still my absolute favorite episode.
Ours too.
Interviews like this, you can put out a message. And at the same time that literally my local 9 p.m. news is reporting on the latest stupid keto-like diet causes more heart events nonsense that's based on unpeer-reviewed observation that's absolutely ridiculous. That message, that headline gets out and people see that. Podcasting is a way to kind of counter that. And you're right. We live in this really cool time where if this matters to you and you're in really poor health or you want to get out in front of this, there's not really a lot of limitation on where you can find information. You can dial up so many great podcasts that will get you on the right track and will give you a counter message to what's being promoted in the mainstream media. So hopefully, more people understand that and realize that health is their own responsibility. They shouldn't be waiting around for the government or the medical system or the food industry to really come and save them and give them the right information. It's not their job. It's not their responsibility. But people should feel empowered that there are ways to get good information.
Right. And that's the deal. That's not what they need to do. That's what we try to get explained to people. They're a business. Food companies a business, drug companies a business, sugar industry, it's a business. They want your money. They were never supposed to be taking care of our health. We've got to take care of our health our own way. And the best way to do it is avoid all the products that those people are putting out. Avoid the sugar, avoid the processed food, avoid, these drugs that, and it was so amazing to think that some of these things that I learned when I was going through, I'm a doctor of pharmacy. As I was going through school, I was taught that type 2 diabetes is irreversible. It's chronic and it's irreversible and it's progressive. And I believed that all the way through. I just thought that's the way it was until I started reading all this all this information that's actually been out a while and found out this is not true. You can totally stopped and reversed your obesity, your type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, if you haven't gone too far. And it's like, I found my passion. Now I've got to get this word out to as many people as I can. And I love the way you're doing it. It's wonderful. You've got some great podcasts.
Well, thanks, man. It's so cool. And, it's interesting. I was in a similar place to you in my career where I'm a personal trainer. I'm getting paid to count to 12 poorly. I'm also paid to get people results and to come up feeling like you're failing all the time. You're giving people the advice. Do I really think that 100% of my clients all really suck at following my advice? There's got to be something else going on here. And so, I think that's a good point. And, I feel like most of us lament the fact that doctors don't get a lot of nutrition education. And I certainly understand that. But I'm to the point now where I don't want doctors to get more education, because if they do, it's going to be the wrong thing. It's just going to entrench them even more in the wrong message. We need people like you to go out and learn it on their own, to be sick of, the system and sick of how you're feeling personally with your own health. And it's such a cool theme with so many doctors like yourself out there who find this message. They had to find it on their own because it wasn't taught them. But if they were taught more information, it'd be the wrong stuff anyway.
Right. And it's crazy that now that there are a lot of physicians that are out there finding the truth, and finding how much our nutrition can actually reverse a lot of these things. But then when they start telling people, now they're getting sued, because that's where the money is. You're starting to infringe on other people's products, these food manufacturers and drug companies and everything, and they don't like it. But we got to get it out there somewhere.
We got to get it out there. I don't envy what doctors have up against them. I think it's a real challenge. Again, you well know personally, and you have to make some really difficult decisions. Are you going to change your career? Are you going to not be in an insurance model anymore? There's some really tough decisions, and I don't fault any doctor for doing anything that they want to do. And I respect the people that have made changes and taken pay cuts or retired early and, did different content. It's a really difficult position to be in. I don't envy that at all.
Yeah. We watched your episode 463 and 466. We listened to both of those. And these are two episodes that it goes right along with what you're saying about what these physicians are doing. And it was wonderful. They were both special episodes with medical professionals and the ketogenic diets. It is so neat when you see the light come on in all these physicians' heads and they come up. And one of the biggest ones that stood out to me is the doctor, and I'm sorry, I don't remember her name.
It's a lady.
Yeah. Do you remember her name?
She graduated from school in 2015. You probably did it a while back, but she talked about, she went to Dr. Jason Fung and trained with him.
Karen Zinn? No, it wasn't Karen Zinn. It was Evelyn Boudoir.
Sounds like it could be. We're going to take your word for that one. Maybe that's why we couldn't remember her last name.
I don't practice French. I had to practice that a long time to even be kind of close. So.
I remember you saying that at the beginning, so it was her.
But it was so, it was so neat that she, and I've heard this from other physicians too, and a lot of them that go to our conferences, but just my friends also talking about they're giving all this advice on how to treat type 2 diabetes and giving the insulin and giving all these drugs that increase your insulin, and all the patients were getting worse. They're coming in worse and worse. They just go from oral medications to injectable medications and start increasing the amount of insulin they're going to get. Now this crazy Ozempic that they're going out and publicizing and all the horrible things about that. And they aren't telling people about all the horrible effects of this. But what she said that I thought was so cool was in her practice, patients were coming in and they were always down, they were upset, they were beaten because they're trying to do everything the doctors tell them to, and they keep getting worse and worse. But when she went to Jason Fung, Dr. Jason Fung's, it was the exact opposite. Patients were coming in, they were losing weight, they'd been on extreme amounts of insulin, and now they're on no insulin, no diabetic medications, not even metformin, nothing. And she said it was so cool. That's kind of practice that she wanted, is to start having the physicians are happy because they're actually feeling like they're actually helping this person's health like they always wanted to. The patients are happy. It's something that she'd never seen before in her practice. And I thought that is an eye opener. That's the kind of thing that people need to hear.
It's such a beautiful story. And she was willing to leave the industry. She was willing to go back to doing translating services. Mm-hmm. And, fortunately for her, she was in a financial position that she was able to do that if she wanted to. But she was ready to walk. And she started getting complaints. And the government kind of came after her, the Canadian government. And oh my goodness, what a rigmarole just to actually help people. If somebody would have gone into the clinic and seen so many happy skipping patients, they might have been stoked all for the fact that now they're not earning as much money, right? Like now you're curing people, and so you're going to kill the industry. But yeah, it's so sad that that's the way the system is. It's sad that people have to face those decisions. But in her case, like, what a wonderful, happy story that she decided to stick with it and practice medicine in her own way and fight those charges against her. You know, it'd be just as easy to say, all right, I'll shut up about it and just go about your merry way. So.
Isn't it crazy that they're being sought after by the food companies, drug companies, and all their lawyers and everything, because they're telling people to eat whole, real food that they've been eating since the very beginning of time. Stick with your meats, fruits, and vegetables. And they are getting sued for all kinds of money, you know, because they're telling their people to eat healthy food like we always have. Yeah. It's like they don't realize all this man-made food just started coming really, really getting bad around 1977, you know, when the new dietary guidelines came on, the exact same time that obesity came along, the exact same time that our childhood obesity has now become a regular insulin dependent diabetes, you know, that was never was, you know, it's no longer the adult onset diabetes, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you want to get in this or not, but did you want to get into what you told us when we were on your podcast about where the regulations are going for childhood obesity and childhood type 2 diabetes, which there never used to be such thing? Do you want to talk about what you told us?
Absolutely.
It made me so mad. I couldn't believe that they're doing this. And this can actually absolutely ruin children.
I wanted to get you fired up. I wanted to
you did. You did it.
Good. That's great. Oh boy. So yeah, it was January that the American Pediatrics Association, if I'm not mistaken, made new recommendations, and it was covered on a very, very popular mainstream podcast called, what is it called? The Drive? No, it's not The Drive. Excuse me. The Daily. I think it's the New York Times that does it. And somebody sent this to me because they couldn't believe what they were hearing. And so I turned it on and listened. I told you guys, I've listened to this 5 times, literally, because I keep thinking like, no, I didn't hear that. I must have misheard it, or maybe it was out of context. Let me go check this out again. And as you and I were talking off air, this will sound like it was chronological in this short episode, but it really wasn't. It just kind of skipped around. But to be able to identify the problem of what's going on, you know, with our general population, especially our children, obesity is a huge problem, is what they're saying. So it wasn't really a problem in the 60s. It started to become more and more of a problem in the 70s and 80s. We did studies even in schools where we went to different school districts. In one school district, we did everything that we thought would benefit these kids. We taught them about exercise. We gave them more fruits and vegetables. We observed what happened for a period of time, however long it was. There was no difference between that school district and the control. So from that observation, among others, we have decided that obesity is such a big problem. It's increasing. We need to really nip it in the bud. Therefore, and this is where it all turns. Therefore, at age 2, we're recommending, I think it's like 26 hours of some type of counseling. They said it would be not really covered by insurance. It was for the 2-year-old, which I don't even know. What kind of therapy do you do for a 2-year-old? I don't shock therapy on the kid. Like really. a donut or a Twinkie or something. I don't know. So that could start at age 2. By age 12, the doctors are recommended to prescribe Ozempic or other, you know, this new class of weight loss drugs, kind of converted from like a diabetes drug over to a weight loss drug that kills your appetite. And by 13, they're recommending bariatric surgery. And even in the episode, like the host is kind of like acknowledging like, wow, that's kind of like a big deal, like bariatric surgery. And the guest is like, yeah, it's a really big deal. We need to really consider this because the child's stomach is never going to go back to what it was before. This is, you know, a one and done kind of a thing. And we're going to alter this for the rest of your life. But this is how important we think this problem is. How do you identify the problem perfectly and not think that maybe something else is going on? Like, do you think maybe something changed in the 50s and 60s and 70s that developed this problem that's not just like fruits and vegetables and exercise? Like, it's so insane what they're recommending to kids. And it just seems like every few months they double down on some stupid recommendation, or there's another new study that says low carb diets associated with this. You read how it's done. The studies are terrible. You read what they're measuring. It's not even relevant. It's a food study that they did 13 years ago where they asked somebody what they ate once for a year, average or whatever. And then we go back and say, okay, well, this guy had some red meat. We don't know with what, but we're going to say, oh, since there were 2 more heart attacks in this group than there were in the control, then this group that had red meat is dying and will die of heart attack. It's so insane.
It is.
It's insane.
And it's so sad because they're trying to say that they think maybe there's a genetic component to this, even though we never ever saw type 2 diabetes in children before the 70s. Even when I started practicing in 92, we didn't see it very much at all. And now all of a sudden we're seeing it. It's like if all these things happened since around the 70s, and that's when our new dietary guidelines came in, and that's when our obesity rates, our type 2 diabetes rates, all the metabolic syndrome, they have skyrocketed since then. Why are they so against putting the two together and say, oh, maybe this is because of what they eat, what our children eat and everything? And so I actually talked to our endocrinologist or her dietitian, and she actually told me that, yes, they know that this is because of the food that they eat, but people don't want to change the way they eat. So instead they have to do this. Well, now they're doing this like the Ozempic, which, yes, it does keep food in your stomach for a little bit longer. That's why your body actually produces this normal hormone. But it also increases your insulin levels, which is the whole problem with this anyway, is keeping our insulin levels high. And that's why when they give them the Ozempic, they say, here, you're going to be on this for the rest of your life. It's like, of course, you're going to be on the rest of life because it continues to make your insulin be higher than it should be for longer periods of time. So we are actually making your type 2 diabetes worse with this medication. But hey, if it makes you where you don't want to eat as much, which is the same thing they could do with just eating meat. Eating meat and fat, and that will stay in your stomach for a longer period of time. That'll keep you satiated for a longer period of time. And they won't do this. They're going to go Ozempic. And now they're going to say, and if you're 13 years old, we're going to cut out part of your stomach. You will never have it the rest of your life. And they're acting like this is a great recommendation instead of just saying, why don't you just get away from man-made processed food with the box, bottles, bags, and cans and just eat the nutrition that we used to eat all the way from the very beginning of time.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That's why
you got me riled.
And all of us are now riled up. This is great. This is why I love your work, and making things simple for people is just eat the food that a species was adapted to. Every species has things that they eat and things that they are not adapted to eat. You can't feed a tiger the same way you feed a turtle. Why would we be so vastly different? We have short growing seasons where things are available that we can eat, and fruits and vegetables and things like that. And we can prepare them. We can, soak things and sprout things and ferment things and make them really safe. We can also, use fire to help us, process the calories from meat. And that is our species appropriate diet. And if we stick to that, everything seems to go really well. It's funny to think back on, the work of Nina Teicholz. I just love people like her that are journalists. They're not in the health space. They are paid to ask questions, write books and write articles, and they're just investigating things. And to think that our nutrition guidelines were set up to create help with really one thing, it was heart attacks. And it was really only sort of studied in middle-aged dudes. So we changed the diet and the nutritional guidelines for every man, woman, and child in the entire country to help with one thing, and that was heart attacks. Right. What's the number one killer in America right now? It's heart attacks. It didn't even fix the one thing that it was trying to fix in a very small subset of the population. And now we have all these other pandemics, diabetes, of obesity, of sleep apnea, sleep issue, you name it. We have such a worse outcome, and we didn't even solve the one problem we were trying to fix. It's crazy.
Right. And that's what I thought was interesting, because it all started back in 1955 when Eisenhower had a heart attack. And it threw everybody over because they had no idea what caused heart attacks. We didn't used to have heart attacks back then, nowhere near like we do now. Yep. So things have to start clicking in people's minds what all changed at the same time? Yeah. And that's why, and I know you're strict carnivore. We do love meat, and a lot of our meals are just strictly meat. But, we say, if you want to eat fruits and vegetables, if your body tolerates them, then do. If they don't, then that's definitely, there are reasons why a lot of people don't tolerate vegetables. But if you don't tolerate them, don't eat them. Yeah. But still, any of that, even the worst meat you can get from a grocery store, and the vegetables are going to be way better than anything you're getting down those middle aisles. And then, box, bottles, bags, cans, packaged meats, all that crud that is killing. And it's killing the whole world because we're sending these off to all these other countries too.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with what you said. Our food system, when it comes to animal products is very high quality. And I align myself with the idea that buying your meat, if all you can afford is buying something at your local Walmart, it might not be local to you, but it's local to all of us. It is local, USA produced. It is a very high standard. You know, if people have the means to do different things, like I know you guys buy half a cow. I was able to do that last year, which is great. It's still in my freezer. Like, if you can do that, awesome. But yeah, you don't need to break the bank. You can do this on a few dollars a day. It does not need to be cost prohibitive whatsoever.
Oh, yeah. And especially if you start eating this way with the meat and the fat, you feel satiated for so much longer. You don't get hungry. So by that, you just default. You don't eat as often. You know, with the carbohydrates, you have to eat about every 2, 3, 4 hours, or you're going to be just ravenously hungry. But when you eat the healthy way, you don't get fucked. So that helps with cost also, because you find out that you really eating 1 or 2 times a day is all you need. So all the money you're spending on all these processed foods and all this stuff, all these carbs that you eat all through the day, the money balances out. It is not expensive to eat healthy, especially if you're only doing 1 to 2 meals, which just kind of comes naturally.
It comes naturally.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy. It's affordable. Like, I used to tell people, like, oh, I love cooking. I love going to the store. You should love going to the store as well and buy fresh ingredients. And oh my goodness, the preparation is like a whole Sunday, and you're chopping and cutting, and half of what you buy gets wasted anyway. And you've had like your life's limit of like brown rice. Like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, you don't need to do all that. Save your time, save your money, focus on the foods that are going to make you really satiated, and go on a walk. Like, go enjoy your life.
Yeah,
exactly.
And as we've been talking about, going on a walk after you eat.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Well, just that it helps with your insulin levels. If after you eat, you go for a walk, it helps bring down your insulin.
And now that these CGMs have come out with the continuous glucose monitors that people are wearing, they're finding out a lot more, which is wonderful. You know, what spikes your glucose, what doesn't, what helps keep it down. Eating, you know, like a apple cider vinegar before you eat a carbohydrate. If you're going to eat a carbohydrate, have the apple cider vinegar first, and that can decrease the amount of carbohydrates getting in your system and all that stuff. You're talking about the trouble for the wife for fixing all the foods. That when we first started, we started with a program, Body for Life. And back then, people really did think you were supposed to eat like, 5 times a day, 5, 6 times a day. My poor wife. I was working 12-hour shifts, and this little sweetheart, she was putting 6.
We were eating 6 meals a day. Is that what you mean?
How much were you putting in my lunchbox? 3, 4? Three or 4 lunches in my lunchbox every single day because I worked longer hours. It was crazy. And we were starving. Before our next meal, we were always starving. It's like, well, I guess this is just the way it is. And then we found the healthy way to die is like, I'm never hungry anymore. Never.
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. Which one of you was working 12-hour shifts?
I was. Yeah, really. She was working more than that.
So what happened?
Yeah, it's crazy.
In your industry, or what you were doing, what happened to make you go low carb? Because were you low carb when you very first started in 2007?
Yeah, great question. Absolutely not. I was very high carb. I was racing road bikes, some mountain bikes, but mostly road bikes competitively. And so, we know as an endurance athlete, you are reliant on carbohydrate for energy. And so since your body only stores such a very, very, very small amount of carbohydrate, what happens is you run out, you bonk. Like most people can relate to, like, you do a run or ride or something and you go too hard and maybe you didn't eat before and you're fine. And then all of a sudden your energy just drops off a cliff. That is your body running out of carbohydrates. So the idea for endurance athletes, and, you mentioned the episodes that we did with medical professionals, Tim Noakes was famous for setting these recommendations of like endurance athletes need to be consuming a very high carbohydrate diet. And we just knew that, like, of course we should. So lots of sugar in the water bottle, different products and goos and the blocks and whatever. Mm-hmm. And at the time, what I was being trained for, since I already had somewhat of an expertise on heart rate training, our company offered metabolic testing. So we were actually pretty unique in the sense that we could use a metabolic cart that is typically only available at, universities and clinics and labs and things like that. We had the same equipment. And so a metabolic cart will hook a computer up to an umbilical cord that hooks up to a mask, and the mask collects your respirations. And so you can put somebody in a dark room and have them rest, and we can tell them what their baseline metabolism is. It's like how many calories they burn. We can also hook them up to a treadmill or a bike and ramp them up until they tap out. And that's kind of like what you see as like a VO2 max test. So I was trained to be able to do that. I oversaw that program in the West region of my company. So I was traveling around to lots of different clubs and teaching other personal trainers how to use the carts and how to interpret the results and get people the results. And in the beginning, we only knew like the calorie side of things. So it was like, if we found out that you naturally burned 2,000 calories, well, all we would need to get you to do is either eat 500 calories less or move 500 calories more and consume, have an imbalance in your calories or some combination of the two, and you will be able to lose weight. So 500 calories of a deficit multiplied by 7 is 3,500 calories, which is the same as a pound of weight. And so if you just did that, let's say you had 20 pounds to lose, all you have to do is do that for 20 weeks, and you'll just, literally lose the weight 1 pound at a time until you hit your target goal. And obviously that just didn't work for people. And we just thought people sucked at the advice and not following the advice. Which is so ridiculous. And our metabolic carts even had another feature that went above and beyond just determining the calories you would burn. It had a feature where we measure not only the oxygen that you were breathing in, but also the carbon dioxide that you were breathing in. And so it would show the exchange of the oxygen and carbon dioxide, which is a direct byproduct of the type of calories, the type of fuel that your body's using. So we could tell you what your baseline metabolism is, and we could also say whether you are leaning more towards a fat metabolism or towards a carbohydrate metabolism. And in the beginning of my career, I didn't understand how you could manipulate those things. I just understood like, okay, this says you're burning 2,000 calories, you're burning 80% of your calories from carbohydrates. So eat, mostly carbohydrates, and that will suit that metabolism. And, we did a call in 2012 with a contractor who was doing work in Colorado. And he said on the phone that we've learned that you can use these carts, especially with endurance athletes and anybody who wants to burn off fat, that if you change the diet and you introduce more fat to the diet and reduce the carbohydrates, you'll drive the metabolism towards fat burning versus carbohydrate burning. He was training world-class athletes who were making it to, world championships in Kona. They were eating like 50 or 60 calories an hour, performing at very, very high levels, and were feeling great. Like that was like, the hell are you guys talking about? He's saying these guys are eating butter and bacon and they can ride forever. Like that's weird. And so that's what kind of got me into the idea of at least that fat was not bad for you. And so we kind of had this saying like, eat fat, get fit. It was okay to have, some coconut oil, or I splashed a little bit extra like olive oil with an avocado in my salad and that kind of thing.
Right.
And, unfortunately, my formal nutrition training as a nutrition coach was with a company. I got certified in 2017, and they were all about balance and behavior change. And as much as I appreciate their approach to health, it really threw me back in the opposite direction of like, we do need to recommend lots of whole grains. Here's the amount of whole grains you're eating. Here's the fruits and vegetables. Make sure you're getting a color or the rainbow. And then again, it was like coaching in a way that we were like behavior coaching. So you would sign up for sessions with me. You'd come in every 2 weeks. You would tell me why you failed. We always had a box of Kleenexes in the nutrition coaching office because people would be a mess. They thought they sucked at, doing whatever behaviors they were supposed to do. And we would say, okay, go back and do your food journaling and make sure you're, eating until you're 80% full and, eat the rainbow of vegetables and all this stuff. And so it took me back in the opposite direction. And so with a combination of understanding over time that we could really shift somebody's metabolism by using these carts and by changing the diet and saying like, no, you actually really should stay away from the grains and vegetables, and you should include more fat and protein in the diet. We could get your metabolism not only at baseline, we can make it be higher than normal of what it should be. If you started doing fasting or you started doing low carb diets, people had metabolisms that were running really, really high, and they were running hot as far as fat burning. These people were chewing through 70, 80, 90% of their calories from fat and saying like, I can go ride fasted. I never bonk. I don't know what's going on. Like, why am I not having a drop off in energy? So
or being starving to death.
Right. Exactly. People are like, well, like you're telling me based on this test, you're giving me like a minimum number of calories I should be eating. But since this number is so far higher than what they were even consuming because they were doing things like intermittent fasting, they were like, what the hell should I do? Like, what do you want me to do? Eat Twinkies and soda again? Like, I feel really good. I'm losing fat. I feel great. I've got great endurance. And so we just kind of shifted our program. The gym that we have in our valley is the only one that there is in the state. There's like 140 or 150 locations around the country. But for here, we were kind of on an island. So there was a particular weight loss contest. My wife and I were kind of forced to do every quarter. We would put people through this weight loss program and give them, the packet of 100 recipes and the food list of all these exotic ingredients. And it just wouldn't work. But we'd have to turn around and find new people to do this program every 3 months, which was miserable. Like, we knew the compliance percentage of people even trying to weigh out of the contest at the very end was like 15%. Like, people would quit, and then they don't want to do the thing again because they already failed it once or twice. So you have to keep finding new people, and it sucked. We hated it. And through, again, understanding using these metabolic carts so we could shift metabolism towards fat, the metabolism would go up, their fat burning percentage would go up, they would lose weight without hunger. We knew all that. And so, my wife and I were sitting around, we're like, look, we've got to do this program anyway. Let's do something different. Why don't we do our own thing? And we found low carbohydrate meal plans, and we gave it to our people and said, don't even worry, about these. Just find recipes that you love and your family loves, and just eat them until you're really full. You don't track calories. We're not even going to give you this 100-page nonsense of like all these exotic ingredients and all this hoopla. It's just noise, it's just a waste of time. Yeah. And we had tremendous results from that. And once we started to see that, we could get people to lose essentially 100% of their weight loss from fat, meaning we could have people hold on to lean mass and only lose fat. Right. That's impossible. In my personal training book, my manual says you can't do that. We were seeing it. We were tracking it, and we were doing it. It was amazing it was so fun to, like, you've done this thing for so long and everybody fails, right? Everybody is failing at it. And so you just think like, well, everybody's just really terrible at wanting to get better. Or like you said, earlier, like that we have this idea that people are lazy or they don't want to be healthy. When, our experience, our shared experience, you guys have experienced the same thing, is like, no, people are willing to get healthy. They just need the right information. Right. And so that just, all of a sudden you're doing now something that everybody is succeeding at. You can't hardly find one person that it doesn't work for if they give it a try. You're just like, you're lit up. You're so excited to go to work on Monday at 6 a.m. because you're changing lives finally. So
for the better.
For the better. Yeah, finally. I know. It was amazing. And we're so passionate about it. And, it's so much fun and so different to see people actually healing and getting better. And again, in a way that they're not that hungry. So that's how I found low carbohydrate. And eventually that got me into a carnivore diet. I have found over time, unfortunately, that I'm an abstainer. I'm very confident that I am a sugar addict. And so for me, the problem, I'm not going to argue that fruit is the problem. That's not the hill I'm going to die on. But I know for me, if I eat the fruit, that's going to lead to the donut kebabs I was telling you about when we did the other episode. I personally am going to get really hungry, and I'm going to seek out sugar in other places. And that's going to really affect my mentality and my anxiety. So I think a lot of people can moderate, and that's wonderful. They don't need to be strict carnivore. But for me, it just works a little better.
Right. Oh, I totally agree. That's why I even did one of my podcasts talking about fructose, because that's what the doctors, and again, this isn't about doctors because they don't get the information either. They get zero information on nutrition in school either. So they're just doing what they're told to do. And then they're looking at the studies, which are also funded by the food companies, the sugar industry, and the drug companies, kind of crazy. They're the ones putting out these studies. But just like what you just did, you felt the same thing that the physician in your podcast that we were talking about felt, was like, all of a sudden, instead of our patients coming in and being down on themselves and feeling worse and worse, now all of a sudden they're feeling great about themselves. And then you feel great. They feel great. They continue on. And it's like, it's crazy that it's so hard for us to try to get that feeling through everybody, get this information out there to everybody so they can understand it. And I understand they're saying, yeah, but my doctor says this, and you're just some guy on a podcast. I don't really know you. I've got to trust them. So that's what's so great about now all the physicians who are finally doing this and finally learning this on their own, and they feel better. So now they're being more vocal. And I really hope that we're on a big spiral up and start getting people aware of what's going on. And they've got to realize, I'm not making any money off this trying to tell people the right way to eat. I'm not trying to sell them a food product saying, if you really want to get healthy, eat my product. We're not doing that. We're saying, if you really want to get healthy, eat God's product. Eat the meat, eat the fruits, eat the vegetables, stay away from the man-made stuff. And you're going to be amazed at how much better you feel, clarity, everything. And it's not just the weight. And that's what we want to tell people. It's not about the weight. That's just a side effect. So when you start eating healthy and you start feeling great and your body starts mending itself, the fat will come off. That's just a positive side effect, so keep that going. This isn't about weight. It's about health. It just so happens when you're doing it the right way, it goes in the same direction.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's wonderful advice. And I think people need to see that if you think about it as a business, the medical industry, the food industry, it's just a business. And to be a good business, you need to have a customer and you need to have them for the longest amount of time. So you need to keep people alive. You can't kill your people, but you need them on really, really early. So we found all these treatments and pills that like we can get you on as a child and keep you alive until you're 80 or 90 suffering. Like if you're a business, that's a really good business. And like I don't sell every other week nutrition coaching the way that I did. I say like, look, book me once, maybe twice, and you're probably going to be okay. You probably won't need to talk to me anymore.
Right.
Yep, that's the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a deal, like you said, with all this processed food, it is a business. And the way they make the business, keep people hungry, keep them coming back for more, get them addicted to sugar. So they have to have more and more and more, keep them hungry. So eat these carbohydrates that don't satisfy anything in your body and nutritionally or anything. And now you're continuously hungry. So you're continuously buying their product. And if we can get it out there that, just realize that's what's going on, you can reverse that so easily. And again, it's not the drug manufacturer or food manufacturer's fault. They're a business, they're doing what they're supposed to. They're trying to keep their shareholders happy, but that doesn't, by doing that, it makes everybody else miserable. So you got to be responsible for your own health. And hopefully this kind of podcast will get people understanding that.
Well, and just like what you said with what for yourself, that carnivore works the best for you. It's like just finding that thing that works best for you. People don't have to go total carnivore, but they do need to go with whole foods.
Right. Yeah. Nobody's going to eat processed food and say, this works best for me. I think I look better with an extra couple 100 pounds on me. I feel wonderful.
Yeah, totally. And Teresa, that is such a good point. It's cool, again, to see that we've gone down this diet experiment to try to fix one thing. If we just go back to what should be common sense, but it hasn't been normalized, so people forget that like it's not normal to look overweight or have a belly. Like you fix everything. All of it kind of fixes, like your reproductive health is better, your brain health is better, your physical, your fat, like you name it, every system gets better just by doing that.
Yeah,
your sleep, everything. So is there anything you've read or listened to lately, any other podcasts or books that you listen to that you would recommend?
Yeah, that really stuck out with you.
Oh, yeah. I'm constantly trying to keep something in my ears. I'm always relearning things. I'm a slow learner, clearly from my story of like using these metabolic carts since 2007. I didn't get into low carb, really fully like keto low carb until like 2018. Tells you everything you need to know about slow learning. I just finished, it's not new, but I just finished the book, The Case for Keto from Gary Taubes, which is just such a wonderful book and talking about the history of sugar and processed foods. In preparation for this, I'd listened to a few episodes of your show, which I actually never miss an episode. Your episode of the history of processed foods is really fantastic. So I just try to get as much information as I can, even though, I'll listen to things 2 or 3 times. My favorite book from this last year has been Jane Reese Buxton's book, The Great Plant-Based Con. I think is a wonderful, wonderful book that more people can be reading. She did an amazing job writing it. She's not carnivore. She eats lots of plants, but really makes a very thorough case that like the plant-based message itself is quite harmful. And it's really masterfully done. She's got tons of citations with a bunch of all of our friends in the low carb world. And it's a really well done book. So that's been probably my favorite book to come out in the last, year or two, besides, Toxic Superfoods and Brain Energy by Chris Palmer have also been amazing. So I try to keep those at the top of mind.
Yeah. So we had listened to your podcast with that lady and she talked about that book, or you brought it up. And so I actually just got it. I started it yesterday and it is very good. Yeah.
It's really, really good.
Con. Yeah.
Part of it. Go ahead.
No.
Well, I was just going to say, like, part of what she does really masterfully that I really appreciate, and we went over this, I interviewed her last summer, and we talked about how she did this. She had 2 contrasting chapters, and one is, here is all the things you could potentially get too much of if you're eating a plant-based diet. And here's a potential list of things you won't get enough of. And so it's really interesting to say like, oh, wow, you're going to be malnourished in all these different ways. But also you got to be careful that you might overload yourself on all these other things. And again, it's not to say that, somebody can't eat plant-based. It's just they need to be aware of some of these things because that message, the plant-based message is really, really powerful. They make really expensive and very well-produced and movies like The Game Changers that has tons of financial incentives behind it. And people just think like, this is the best thing I can do for myself, for, the ethical treatment of animals and for the planet's health. And none of it is true. And she does a great job in that book showing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I can already tell.
And that's something else that I don't think people really think about is plants. We're all made to survive in our environment, and plants are made to survive in their environment. So part of the things that they have to do to survive is they put out these phytotoxins, these toxic things like oxalate crystals and everything on their leaves because they don't want animals come and eating them and destroying them. Or like the thing that I think people can understand is like a banana, a green banana. Green bananas are very, very bitter. Nobody likes to eat green bananas. And that's for a reason. Nature makes that way because the seeds inside are not ripe yet. So they don't want animals eating that yet. Once the seeds on the inside get ripe, now the banana becomes ripe. It tastes good. And so now the animals eat that. And, by process, they're going to be spreading the seeds all over the place. So it keeps them going. But what we need to realize is when you're eating the vegetables, you also are taking in those phytotoxins. Some people can handle them, some people can't, but that's something that people don't think about. So you don't want to just go willy-nilly with them. If they don't cause you a problem, then feel free to eat them. There are lots of vitamins and minerals in them, but if they do cause you a problem, you don't necessarily need those either because you really can get other vitamins and minerals out of just animal meat with the protein, the fat-free energy source, protein, because you have, 20,000 different proteins in your body. All made up of amino acids, some as long as 27,000 amino acids long. I mean, you need the protein and fat. By far, our bodies were made to burn fat, not carbohydrates. That's why we have fat all over our bodies, all over our subcutaneous tissue. And like you said, just a tiny, tiny little 10% of our liver is our carbohydrate store. So
that's right.
You got to stop and kind of break down and think common sense. Like, well, that makes more sense. I do understand why I can use fat for my fuel instead of this little bitty carbs. It's going to make me starving as soon as those stores are out. Yeah, so I love the way you look at all that.
Totally. Yeah. And you know what? There's other things you can do. Like you can sub out different plants for other plants. You can eat them more seasonally. You can prepare them in a different way. Like we've had some, wisdom around this stuff for a long time in cultures. There's a reason why most cultures have maybe a spinach dish, but it's also served with like a cream sauce that has some calcium in it or something. Like those two things can help each other and help you absorb the right things and block the wrong things. And so, we can just be smart about it. And if there's an awareness there, it would be so much more helpful for most people. They wouldn't be doing themselves a ton of damage. It's funny that you mentioned the fat thing. My wife was able to do a cadaver dissection course last year. Very, very cool opportunity where she was able to take cadavers in small groups and they were able to dissect them all the way down for an entire week. And she said one of the most surprising things the first day is the woman that they were working on, I think was a cancer patient. So already like very, very lean and kind of wasted away in her 70s. She said, you have no idea how much fat is everywhere, all over the body. Lipid was just everywhere as they were performing this dissection. And we do have so much of it because we need it. We should be burning it, like you said.
Yeah. And which that's important too. I mean, to know that, even something like cancer, you said that she was being eaten away by cancer. Cancer lives off sugar. If you don't have high insulin levels, then you can be starving the cancer, just that alone. And we actually have a friend who did that, had cancer, and they cut out all carbs, all sugar, and that's the way to keep the cancer from either stop it from growing or have it, go back into remission or actually get rid of it, but it's another thing to think about. And it's a healthy way to do it instead of thinking you're going to take another medication with all those adverse effects and then more medication for that. And you get spiraling down a bad way when it'd be so easy to say, well, why don't I just try just eating God-made food? Why don't I just try that and see what it does, see how I feel for a while? Yep. It doesn't take that long. If you really do it, you're going to notice a big difference. Even within 2 or 3 weeks, how you feel clear, you think clear, you feel better, you're not hungry all the time. It's amazing what this does. I really hope people like you and us and all these books that are being written, I really hope we can get the message out that people need to start looking at this stuff on their own. Yeah. And, just like Jason Fung, you read Jason Fung's book, right? The Obesity Code and the Diabetic Code.
So that was when I was doing my metabolic tests. And I knew that if you restricted your calories, your metabolism would drop. But again, the people that were doing fasting had higher than normal metabolisms, yet they weren't eating as much. I couldn't reconcile those two things. It was Jason Fung's work and his book, The Obesity Code, that helped me understand why that might be happening and point me in the direction of saying like, oh, wow, calorie restriction is vastly different than intermittent fasting. They're two different things.
Yeah, definitely. And again, the focus is insulin. I mean, everybody, they try to tell everybody diabetes is a blood glucose problem, and it's not. It's a blood insulin problem. Yep. It just so happens it's the glucose that's making the insulin go up, but it's the carbohydrates that make the glucose go up. So it's like, okay, find this very thing and stop that instead of just keeping, treating the symptoms like we're doing now. Oh, you have high cholesterol. Oh, you have high blood pressure. Oh, you have high glucose. Here we get meds for that. It's like, why do we stop all that and just go all the way back to what caused it in the first place? I love all this stuff. And Jason Fung's books, those are the ones that was what I first read that made me start looking differently also. And it was amazing how much vast amount of information's out there with these books and these podcasts and YouTube videos and everything that talk about what we're talking about. But still, it seems like nobody knows, or very few people know. So we've got our work cut out for us.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But again, it's a work that's really fun. It's, kind of your life mission. I know you guys feel the same way. And, everybody might not turn around to this and everybody might not find this. And more people still watch the news and see those headlines than, will listen to your podcast or my podcast. But it does make a difference. And we all have that responsibility, like we talked about earlier. And it's really rewarding to do,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. Mm-hmm. And one other thing, we just now heard on your last podcast that they are changing the name of Ketocon to Hack Your Health. Is that right?
Hack Your Health, I believe. Yes. I think Robin Schweitzer is in charge of Ketocon. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why. I think keto, the name is kind of gotten a little bit of a bad rap now that so many like food companies are selling like all kinds of different, like what I would consider unnecessary keto products and keto supplements and all this stuff. So yeah, they're moving away from that as a theme for next year and beyond, I believe.
I was wondering about that. Yeah, food manufacturers, just real quick, that's another thing is how they promote, how they'll put things like everybody knows, now people are starting to understand healthy things like avocado oil. And now you'll pick up some salad dressing or something, made with real avocado oil, and you flip it over and look at the massive amount of ingredients. And the first one is like soybean oil, cottonseed oil, safflower oil, and way down the very, very bottom, there's a little bit of avocado oil, but that's the one they promote on the front. It just lets people know you're being suckered in by marketing. It's marketing and it is bad for your health. So just real quick, the Hack Your Health, biohacking. A lot of people don't know what biohacking is. And just in a real quick way, you had brought it up. How do you explain biohacking to people?
Oh, that's a great question.
In a simple way.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with one of my clients who just invested in a cold plunge. They have a sauna. Their whole family uses it. And they were talking about what are some of the benefits of some of these things. And I tried to explain, like, we evolved in a certain way and we're just not living in that certain way anymore. Like if you wanted to spend all year round at 72 degrees, you really probably easily could do it. Your house, your car, your office could all be set at the same temperature. You don't really need to go outside that much. You can DoorDash all your food. And like, we're just not exposing ourselves to things that are, this, what we call like hormetic stressors that help make us stronger and more resilient, which is why I think the COVID pandemic was so hard on people, that everybody has just such easy lives where they're not, exposed to things that make them strong. That the weakest part of our population were the metabolically compromised and they did the worst with the disease. And so when I think of biohacking itself, I think of, tools that can be used for some people if they are finding that they can't find a more natural solution to make themselves stronger, more resilient, and expose themselves to some of these stressors. So I have mixed feelings about it. I don't think it's a bad thing to do a cold plunge. I don't think it's a bad thing to get an infrared sauna. I have an infrared sauna. I get in it every night. Like I use certain tools that really help me, but there's an infrared sauna, 5 feet outside of my window that is the sun, right? Like there is a lake that's right 10 minutes away from my house that is pretty cool in temperature. And like all of these things are, they're nice and they're tools that can be used, but also a lot of these things are free and available outside or, it's just like getting yourself exposed to some of that stuff. So again, if it's a tool and it helps you, that's fine. Like if killing the overhead lights that are, more blue, and wearing orange glasses allow you to watch Drive to Survive on Formula One on Netflix at night. Like, that's okay. That's a cool tool and that's fine. But, when all's said and done, like the more we can find natural solutions, the ones we evolved with, I think it's better and cheaper, if nothing else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the best solutions is just be careful of what you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
Watch what you eat. Eat for a reason. And if you're eating for health, it's going to be with God-made food and not with man-made food by far.
Yeah. What do you think of some of that stuff?
We kind of go back and forth. Like I have zero interest in the cold plunge.
I'll do the cold shower at the end of my shower. I'll stand in it just as cold as it can be for a couple minutes. But
nice.
We haven't invested in the cold plunge yet. But I can see how it works. It makes sense to me, just like you said, with the stressors on the body.
I think the sauna sounds good.
Yeah.
We've been getting out more. We've been walking. So, we go to these conferences and then we read these books, listen to the podcast, and we're like trying to incorporate those things.
Cool.
We have a dog that can be walked. And I mean, we're making an effort. It's kind of weird, how you're like, we try to be so healthy and it's like, oh, we should probably go walking and be outdoors more, just super simple, so we're trying to do things like that.
Cool.
And a sauna would be nice, but that's just, haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that's great. I think walking is the most healthy exercise you could possibly do. More people should do it. It's accessible to everybody. If you're out in the sun, you are developing your very best sunscreen that you could ever develop, which is a nice tan. It's not a good idea to go get burned. Don't take a vacation in, July in Florida when you live up in Toronto, unless you have like a good base, you're going to get fried. That's a totally different thing than exposing yourself and developing a good tan. So that's great. You guys are building those habits.
Yeah.
You just start small and start to incorporate things and see how it feels. And maybe you increase your steps one day.
Yep.
An example that I give from time to time is like when step trackers first came out in like 2012, we were doing challenges and trying to see who could walk more than other people. And I started that year parking at the furthest spot of the parking lot that I could find. I never stopped doing that. That was 10 years ago. I still do that. How many steps is that every time I get out of the car? That's added up to be miles and miles and miles. So little habits like that could really make a big difference.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we do that same thing. We think we'll leave those closer parking lots for the people who are not capable of walking across a parking lot for whatever reason, whether it's trauma, whether it's, something bad to their body their whole life, or whether it's just obesity from eating all this processed food.
Yep.
I'm
totally.
a one-track mind.
That's awesome.
Well, that was is there anything that you would want to talk about that we haven't talked about? Anything that you feel really strongly of letting everybody know?
No, not really. No. This has been a really fun conversation. I think we really covered a lot of different things that people could try. I think the one thing you guys and I discussed on our episode was the importance of resistance training and trying to find some simple ways to add that in, whether that's, body weight, like you guys talked about, or doing some bands, or just finding simple ways to, challenge your muscles. I think is a good idea from time to time. I don't even think you need to do it that frequently, but mixing that in along with, keeping things simple the way you guys do and the way you guys promote with the God-made foods, I think is fantastic. And I think all of us can find something. There's always something we can do to take a step in the right direction. And at the end of the day, it's your health, it's your life, it's your energy, it's your ability to play with your kids and your grandkids and your great grandkids. And it pays you back. Like it's worth it to do some of these things. And it's not that difficult. It can be very simple. And hopefully everybody out there understands that you're not alone and there is support and there's help and you can do it. You can make a difference.
That's exactly right. And there's a big difference between just quantity of life and quality of life. So, there's a lot of people you see that, well, they're older and they've been eating this way their whole lives. Like, yeah, but how many meds are they on? How many times to the doctor? How many times to the hospital? I want to avoid all that.
Yeah.
But anyway, do you have anything?
Fantastic.
Let our listeners know exactly what you do, what your business does besides just podcasting, and then how they can get hold of you.
Yeah, of course. So my wife and I, like I said, started our company, which we call Boundless Body LLC. Bethany came up with the name for the business, which I fell in love with immediately. We love the idea of boundless energy, boundless life, no limits to what you are wanting to do. And so we're a small personal training company primarily. We deal with health and fitness. I am a personal trainer and nutrition coach. Obviously, I specialize in low carbohydrate, keto, and carnivore diets. My wife does more. She also is a personal trainer, but she does Pilates, We do that on site here at our house, which we built our basement during the pandemic into be a personal training studio and a Pilates studio. She also works with people in person with myofascial work. So people that are in pain of some kind, have injuries. She does tissue work with people to help get them out of pain and does really wonderful work. I see miracles happen all the time with the kind of stuff that she does. So we work with people in person. We work with people virtually, people high risk from all over the world. I've got people that I've trained now for almost 3 years that I've never met in person that we do, virtual workouts. I did one today with somebody in Virginia, which is great. And we also offer complimentary 30-minute sessions for anybody out there who just wants to chat. It could be about anything, if nothing else, just to introduce yourselves, say hi, or we could talk about health or fitness or nutrition. The main hub to find us is our website, which is myboundlessbody.com. And one of the first things you'll see there is a book now button, and people can click on that and again, book a time. It'll be set up in your time zone. We're synced up to our personal calendar. So to make sure to be a time that I'm available and we can chat. We do those all the time. But yeah, that's the main hub where they can find our social media. They can find our podcast. Anybody can reach out and message us there. I was somewhat consistent with writing a blog that turned into a monthly newsletter, which turned into this is very time consuming. I don't like doing it as much. So you can read past episodes of that if you like. But all of that is found on our website, which is myboundlessbody.com.
Awesome.
That is great. And Casey, it has been wonderful getting to know you, to meet you. And I guarantee we're going to be keeping in contact the rest of our lives. It's wonderful having the same mission.
Absolutely.
It really is.
So much.
Yeah, it really is. I'm so grateful that I decided to sit down at a random table with these random lovely people. We had a wonderful chat over dinner, and really love your work. And it's such an honor to be here today.
Thank you so much.
We love your work as well. It's great.
That's right. We do. Keep it up. As long as your body will let you keep it up. That's a lot of podcasts.
Can't stop.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you so much. And again, this was Casey Ruff, and a wonderful interview. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for listening, and have a great week. And remember, make simple, healthy choices to live a quality life. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button below and be sure to tell someone else who may want to change their health path as well. And don't forget, you can also purchase my book, Your Plate is Your Fate, on Amazon or Audible. And if you do, please leave a review.